This is Matt Rosen, and this is the Grit Mindset with me, your host, Matt Rosen. The mission of the Grit Mindset is to inspire and empower our listeners by delving deep into the journeys of those who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. Through authentic conversations, we uncover the mindsets, strategies, and lessons that have propelled these individuals to overcome adversity and achieve success. My aim is to provide actionable insights and real-world advice to help our listeners cultivate their own grit and navigate their personal and professional lives with confidence and resilience. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Grit Mindset. I'm Matt Rosen, your host. It's great to have you with us again. I've got a good friend and golfing buddy of mine who's a very successful businessman named Homero Gonzalez with me. So let's welcome him to the show and start to hear about his story and how he thinks about grit. Homero, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on board. I appreciate it. I'm honored you would ask me. Thank you.
Well, you've got a good story. I know we look forward to hearing it. So tell us a little bit about, I'm going to mess up the name of your company. I know it's DFW Paint and other things.
So long. It's DFW America Painting and Wallcovering. No worries. That's part of the evolution of the company. So yeah.
Yeah, I hear you're rebranding it.
Yeah, we'll be working on that. That is a mouthful, but it gives you an idea of what we do. And I didn't think the wall covering part was important until I had a representative from, I'm going to butcher the name, a harem, call and like, why is this important? Because it's in your name. You do wall covering. So eventually we will get it down to DFW APW, which has been philosophical constraints in terms of conversation with my business partner about that. So DFW American Painting Wall Covering.
We'll look forward to hearing more about that story and what you guys do. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you went from Dallas born and raised to being a successful local business guy.
Well, I appreciate you using the word successful, right? Because we're here. So I was born and raised in Dallas. I grew up in the furthest part of Dallas, which is around Loop 12, Burnell, and Singleton.
Yeah.
So we call it Ledbetter. That's from birth until sixth grade. What's fascinating about that area is it's insular. It is disenfranchised. We had, Aspermont, Texas has more. They've got a Dairy Queen. We had no restaurants.
Food desert.
Yeah, we had an old affiliated grocery store, and it was a movie theater that they had converted. So grew up there and was fortunate that my grandmother really sent us to Roman Catholic school, St. Cecilia in Oak Cliff. And then eventually we moved to Oak Cliff and did all my schooling here. Went to Griner. I did 2 years in county. As I say, went to Griner. It was a great experience. And then I went to Bishop Dunn all 4 years and they didn't ask me to leave. So that's wonderful. And so Bishop Dunn's been a great experience. And then stayed in town. Studied undergrad at UT Arlington, studied history. I got my undergrad, studied history in the undergrad, and then went on and crossed to the dark side and got my MBA from SMU.
Yeah, I've had a couple of SMU grads here, but I think you're first from UTA. So tell us about the early days in the neighborhood, because we're talking about West Dallas, which is kind of an underserved part of the town. And tell me if you want me to go there. I was going to ask what it was like growing up.
Whatever. Yes.
Yeah. So, Homero, obviously you mentioned, you graduated from SMU, UT Arlington grad, but what was it like? Take us back to the early days in West Dallas growing up. What was that like?
So it was fascinating because we had the ability to go to a place called Marillac Social Center.
Yeah.
And it was tied to the Roman Catholic Church there. And so we learned what we needed to learn, the nuns, right? So we learned how to speak. They were Midwestern. They were from St. Louis. So those were the experiences we had. But it was a small town experience. You really didn't, like other neighborhoods, you had pizza places, Pizza Inn. We had to go to Oak Cliff to go to the Pizza Inn.
Yeah.
And you had to go all the way to, industrial to buy, alcohol. I remember my father would, on the way home, would have to buy a 6-pack. But growing up there was really nothing. I remember riding my bike, and it was a small town feel. And you're riding your bike, and in the alleyways, we didn't have alleys, but you could see the moon, outhouses. And this is 1979, 1980.
Plumbing then?
So I didn't know, but they brought the indoor plumbing, the sewage systems in the mid 70s.
No kidding.
I'm talking about 13 miles from downtown Dallas. And so that's where I started doing research. I wrote a paper on it about the Eagleford and what that was in undergrad. But it was, you really were there all summer, and that's all you knew. That was the only world you knew. Mm-hmm. You had to go to Irving to go to the grocery stores, North Dallas. You had to go to Oak Cliff. And it was special. We didn't know how insular it was. We had a pool and we had J.C. Park. We played Little League Baseball there. It was a local. It looks like the Bad News Bears. That's who we were, the Reds. And so you look forward to that. So it was a special. We were lucky that I think it was Catholic Charities that funded a lot of the programs at Marillac.
Yeah.
So we had summer day camp. And so you'd swim every day at Edison swimming pool. You'd go to excursions, and we played marbles all day under these huge pecan trees. And we would go skating on Fridays, and they took down Paradise and they put a parking lot. Yeah. All our areas for the marbles are gone, all the trees and all that. So it was fun times.
I know that's a lyric from a song. I can't remember which one it is.
It is. I don't know what it is. And what's interesting as you talk about it is we would all start off with a bag of marbles.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, they would have a tournament. And guys would get coffee cans and milk jugs. They're really good marble guys. We had a little, people would dig holes. There's probably about 30 of us, boys and girls, would play. At the end of the year, you had a marble tournament.
Yeah.
And you would put in 100, 200 marbles. And we played for all the marbles.
And how'd you do?
I didn't do very well. I always had I lost all my marbles. And then you'd see this huge couple of cans, and the guy, we played for all the marbles.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it was your grandmother that kind of got you into, was it into Catholic school or into these different camps? Tell me about her.
So my grandmother, she's the one that would take us to Mass on Sundays, and she insisted we do that. So I was at Gabe P. Allen and through first grade, and then she got us into St. Cecilia. So she's the one that said this is important, and that's really where we started to have the passion for private Catholic schools, and then, serving the community. And that's where I learned that, you became an altar boy, you went through the whole system. And so that was important. That led to Bishop Dunn.
Yeah. And Bishop Dunn, my daughter goes there. In fact, that's how we met, was through a Bishop Dunn golf tournament.
Yes.
Tell us just a little bit about the school and what that meant to you.
Bishop Dunn, I woke up one morning, I told my wife I was, my mom says, hey, get ready, you got to go take a test. I'm like, why did I take a test? She goes, you're going to Bishop Dunn. I said, okay. So for me, that was, I got to reconnect, and it was a college prep. And we say that because now, because they have a middle school, it's not college prep anymore, but the program is. But the schooling was fabulous all 4 years. I got to meet my dear friends that I still hang out with, play golf with.
Yeah, they're good guys. I've met a few of them.
You've met those guys, and they're crazy.
Yeah.
But it's a very, the world is so small there. Our class was 88 people or so, and it prepared us for college. For me, undergrad was extremely easy because of my schooling at Bishop Dunn. We had exposure. We still had nuns, and we had priests there. So it was some of those lessons that we learned, we take with us, and they're still embedded.
Yeah, what were some of the most important ones, you think?
Well, it's, it was our senior year, and there was a Sister Mary Bryan, and I remember that was the first time I heard the word entrepreneur. Like, well, what is an entrepreneur? And so I don't know what that had to do with English 4, but she walked us through that, and you start hearing these words, and then she mentioned a key word, captains of industry. The captains of industry are entrepreneurs. You're an entrepreneur, a captain of industry. So that was things they put in. A lot of it was like, hey, listen, these are your lifelong lessons. Take them with you. And we were a family community.
Yeah, no, it's been great for our family, and glad to be a part of it. And hopefully Taylor will find college just as easy as you did. Well, one can hope.
Yeah.
So you went to undergrad, got your MBA. Talk about what happened next and how you went through your career, to become an entrepreneur.
Well, undergrad, I was working for a fabulous family in Dallas. I was working for Carolyn Rose Hunt while I was working on my undergrad, and then I decided to get my MBA. For me, I would rather be a history teacher in middle school. My shareholders wouldn't appreciate that, and that. So then I realized history of business, my senior year at UT Arlington, that all business is looking at the past to predict the future. I was fascinated with the way the banking system grew, the double entry accounting system that came out of Italy. So then I'm like, I could do this, but then I essentially had to reinvent myself. I had to learn accounting. I had to become a numbers person. So then I essentially became something else with a cross discipline. And then when I was done with the MBA, well, I wanted to do more. So what do you got to do? Well, you got to go to get experience. I was in HR. I'd been the HR benefits assistant and then worked a manager of HR, but I hadn't done anything. So I went to go work for, I took a 36-month sabbatical and went to sell equipment for Bobcat,
Yeah, how was
skid steer
that?
loaders. Man, that was
That's got
fat.
to develop some grit.
Oh
Selling
my
equipment.
gosh. You're talking about grit. My mentor exposed me to different companies. I went to go work for him for, to get the sales, part sales and service, get special projects. But it was 100% commission sales. So I left.
You got to eat what you kill.
Yeah, I left Rosewood, these cherry offices. Everybody's trying to go work for Rosewood because
Yeah.
it's the greatest place on earth. I leave it to go sell skid steer loaders. I got a F-350 dually, hauling equipment, tying down the machines. Cold call. Do your own book of business. And I got to sell in the territory that I grew up in. So it was Western Dallas County, and I had Irving, I had those areas. So learned a lot about sales, got the sales process in place, and then I left Rosewood the first time, and then I went to go sell, and then they asked me to come back on the oil and gas side to sell drilling rig time. I'd never done that before. I didn't know anything about oil and gas. But the experiences I learned at Bobcat for me was I took an MBA, and then I had to essentially go and do something else.
Yeah. What was the hardest part about getting good at commission sales for you?
It is, it's the grit, right?
Yeah.
It is waking up every morning. The hardest part was going to the office on a Friday at the end of the month and seeing all the checks in people's boxes, and there's not one for you, but you worked just as hard as everybody else.
Yeah.
I had one, Mr. Lindemood was like, get here at 4 a.m. on a Saturday. I'm like, why? But I did it. He bought a machine from me, but it was a tow and show model. It was the cold call, not hard, the cold calls, knocking doors hard, all of it. But it was that. It's knowing I work just as hard as everybody else, but there's nothing in that box for me.
Yeah.
And then it's building up that pipeline. So then you really have to focus on long term, and every day you're doing is for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the hardest things about sales, getting up, getting knocked down, getting back up again, and keeping after it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I started my career as well. Luckily, I had a little base, but it was enough to eat and pay rent, but that was about it.
Yeah.
So you went back to Rosewood, and you started selling oil rigs, and how did you go from there to, owning a business?
So went back there, and that was the first time I got to help manage an asset.
Yeah.
So they had a drilling company, they were doing rigs, and so I got to learn that part of the business development, really from a data point, looking at everything in the world. So then after that, the entrepreneurial phase, I didn't know that I was going to do. So I wrote a beautiful 3-page paper on why they should be out of the drilling business.
Yeah.
And that those rigs would sit and never drill again, and they have not. And they took me up on the offer. So then there was nothing for me to do there. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a geologist. So then a group of us went to West Texas and bought a oil field service company within hours of the barrel of oil going down, right? So leverage buyout, do the deal. And then we get there, and that's where I was fortunate to go and help run that operation. And so I was chief operating officer, great experiences. You do it, you learn P&L, you service debt, you do everything you're supposed to do. And that, 3 or 4 years, went to Oklahoma. So I got the running the company experience. But then oil and gas is tough on the service side. The only persons that I think keep the money are the ones that have the barrels of oil.
Yeah.
Services is so difficult. The barrier to entry is low. So then COVID hit, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So in 2017, my business partner said, hey, Homero, why don't you go and fix these companies? Why don't you go and fix the family company? That stayed with me. And COVID hit, the classic, take half your paycheck, go away, stay here, do this. And I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I started winding that down, and I put everything I have in this life and don't have in this life in the middle of the table, placed the bet.
All your marbles in.
All the marbles, bought half the company, recapitalized it. And outside of me working the summer of 92 as an apprentice painting, I had never done anything. So I had to relearn, but I didn't know anything about oil and gas. I didn't know about drilling. I didn't know anything about skid steer loaders. So then it just becomes an exercise in learning.
Yeah.
Right? Learning about the different paints, epoxies, urethanes, everything. So I know a little bit more than the day I walked in. So that's where it took me. And I decided to focus on the business development. So as an entrepreneur, there's all sorts of things you need to do. But this business was in the grave, being covered up. I took it out, resuscitated it, And that has been where my business partner said, I want these 3 clients back and I want to get work at this federal contractor. 21 months later, we're able to do that. But man, it's tough to generate. It's like you're back in sales again,
Yeah.
starting from zero, because the company was at zero.
And real quick for the audience, what does the company do exactly?
So we do commercial coatings. That's anything but residential.
Okay.
So we do interior, exterior. We do specialized coatings. Anything that is on the walls. We don't do flooring yet. That's a different. We don't have those things in our toolbox. So we come in there, existing buildings. We come in, refurbish. We do new build, existing. And we come in and we assess what the client needs and what's the quality that they want. So we've been called finesse painters because we do superior
I
quality.
think you've also said you paint the stuff nobody else wants to deal with.
We do. I'm like, why can't you give me the easy stuff? You give me columns. You give me, level 5 finish. These are the buildings that are tough to do, and we get the hard stuff, but we come through.
Yeah, there's money to be made in the niches for sure.
Yes.
So what's been the biggest challenge, would you say? We're here to talk about grit. And I'd like to get your definition on grit, but like, what has been the hardest part about going from working for somebody else to working for yourself? Not only working for yourself, but putting everything in and working for your family. Maybe take us through what that's been like, and maybe a challenge you've had to overcome during that process, or overcoming still.
It has been one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life, and I thought I had done difficult things.
Yeah.
During undergrad, and being married so young and having children so young, that was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that, I look in the mirror every day and I ask myself, am I destroying wealth or am I creating it?
Yeah.
Right. That's been something that I've learned. And I remember walking up to the office. So I got a brick and mortar office. I meet with people and I pick their brains. What do you need to do? How do you got to have success? And so I have an office. I'm walking up, and this is about year 3 in the business.
Yeah.
And I'm on the phone with my daughter. And I said, Roxana, I don't know how much more I can endure.
Mm-hmm.
How do I, and before I even finished, she said, sheer will, grit. And it took me back to that. And because for me, my definition of grit is sandpaper, right? And so we're in the business now. We have different courses, 180, 150, 80. One of these you can only buy at a certain store, and it's a big row, and that's the toughest one. So in each instance, you need to have certain type of grit to take off the existing layers. And so my definition of grit is just making sure that you're the abrasion, and you're working on it and you get through it. And it's difficult.
I like that.
It's difficult. But you need certain layers of it, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking to your field hands, you're talking to clients, board members, you need to have that grit, but do you tone it down? Maybe it's a super fine.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the most coarse you got at 60.
Yeah.
So that's my definition.
Yeah, I like it. So you're now how many years into this journey?
It's year 4.
Yeah.
Year 4.
And how's it going?
It's going. Everybody asks, well, how are things going? I go, it's going.
Yeah.
I remember in the drilling business, there was a man, Tom Gibson, we'd be in meetings and someone says, well, I see light at the end of the tunnel. And Tom would go, it's not a train, is it? So we're in the middle of that.
Yeah.
The market has responded well to us.
Yeah.
And it is just cultivating new relationships and getting more clients, right?
Yeah.
And getting that, how should I say that? It's scalable.
Yeah.
So we need more.
Yeah.
So but year 4, it's, the Fridays, the things you endured in early on, the payrolls. You got money out on the street, as I say.
Yeah.
Homero, what are you doing? Looking for deals and collecting money on
Yeah.
the street. And that's what allows you to just keep creating receivables and then collecting on them so the money's there for your operating account.
Yeah. The money's the oxygen for the business. And heck, that's something, I still deal with today. It's easy to do the work. You still got to get paid for everything you do.
Right.
So, you mentioned you were talking to your daughter, and, I know you had kids young, but they both gone on to be very successful. So, and one of the challenges that I hope to address with the show is really taking what we learned from our generation and trying to instill grit in the generations to come. So maybe share with us, a little bit more about your children and how you raise them and what's worked well.
Yeah, so I've raised them. I believe that we are the last link to the baby boomers.
Yeah.
We are generation. And so I tell my children that if they listen to what we've done, we were exposed to, we got to watch, learn, and sit on the sideline in the early 20s.
Yeah.
The group now doesn't get to do that. anymore. They're thrust into it like, you know, a number one draft pick just in being put in the game.
Yeah.
So my thing to them was, listen, if you listen and have the work ethic and you've got the grit. I remember telling my son in high school, you gotta have grit, son. Come on.
Yeah.
And now he understands that. But I've instilled that in them because they need to be able to have that survival instinct of work hard, work ethic is very important. So I instilled that in them, and they've taken that well, positively. And also the other part to that is vulnerability. I find that with these challenges is people see what you are, but it's very difficult to have conversations about vulnerability.
Yeah.
These are the vulnerabilities I'm going to. I can have a conversation with you as a peer in an entirely different industry, but I can't have that conversation with my teammates,
Yeah.
you know, my peer, my employees. And so with my children, I find that each of them, or I consider them triple crown thoroughbreds. Each of them have triple crown thoroughbreds. I can have different conversations with them about it, and I want to be open so that they know my vulnerabilities, because they're going to go through these things, right? They are at different points of their life because of the situations I put them in.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it's taken to this age to be able to do. I would have been in my mid 40s, so I got to do what my son is doing right now.
Yeah.
So he's in his, you know, he's about to hit 30, and he's able to do it right now. So learning, I took him with me to the cold calls at Bobcat, sat him down in the chair, listened to the transaction.
Yeah.
So I've been very open at the dinner table with discussion of margin, pricing. And my father didn't do that. We were ceramic tile setters.
Yeah.
We've been in the skilled labor industry, but he never talked about those things. So I didn't want to do that to my children. I feel that our children are a representation of us in the business world. You talk, your children are going to learn those things. And so I was very open to that.
Yeah, I also try and do the same, talk with my girls about what the business is about, what we're going through. Sometimes they listen more than others, but they're definitely absorbing some of it. And do you think either one of them will come join you in the family business?
You know, I don't know that. You know, I talk about it, and, you know, clearly I think one of the classic mistakes that's made in skilled labor businesses is I went to college to do something else.
Yeah.
That summer that I painted, that I spent working at the same company, it was as residential. The tactical error was they should have said, hey, go learn business and then come and do this as a 21-year-old. But it was seen as a failure to go to do the same thing your fathers have done.
Yeah.
And I look at in oil and gas in Midland, I have friends, they're third generation oil and gas guys. Nobody thinks of you as a failure if you go work in the family business. So I think that was the thing that with my children, it's always open, but hey, maybe we open up a market in San Francisco. Maybe we open up something. I'm open to anything.
Yeah. Well, I think the skilled labor and trades business is one that's kind of gone unnoticed. I think everyone's like, hey, we're going to all go be knowledge workers, but with AI coming out, you know, there's not going to be a need for as many knowledge workers, but there's a total shortage of plumbers, truckers, painters, electricians. I think that those can be a great living. So how have you had to reconcile that? You know, you obviously successful going to college, grad school, working for one of the most preeminent families in Dallas, and you went back into the skilled trade. So tell me how you've kind of worked with it, because I mean, it sounds like it's been almost a round trip journey for you, and I didn't realize that.
It has. It has. Father being a ceramic tile setter, and now the painting that summer of '92, working for my father-in-law, and now he's my business partner. So it has been one of the things that I'm a laggard when it comes to technology, so I'm trying to get ahead of that. I just got my newest phone. It's an iPhone 16. I had an iPhone 7 for 7 or 8 years, so I amortized the cost. I think I got them right.
Yeah, you totally got them right. So I'm surprised that thing even still turns on.
Still, it's so for me, when I was in the drilling business working, we had specialized technology, cold tubing, turns to the right, and I would walk in and I had to explain a technology that was new.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, if it don't turn to the right, it's not drilling. So I decided to go the opposite end.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell anybody, does paint stick on a wall?
Yeah.
That stuff's been around for a long time. So I decided to go into that world because I don't have to explain that. It's not new. Then all of a sudden we can have success executing by sales, parts, service, right? And I've reconciled it some of my family members may have not reconciled it because what do? I sling paint by the kilo,
Yeah.
right? That's what I've done. And I've reconciled it because everywhere I've gone it's fundamental, right? And so in the skills trade, I've realized, okay, as one of my professors said in grad school, Professor Maurer, like those that can find inefficiencies in the market are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
So my thing is, can I go to a space that I understand?
Yeah.
And the wildest thing is going to a paint store, getting supplies. But I remember going with my father to Dow Tile, going to Superior and going to get tile and getting the blades. So it's a very familiar thing to me. So I've reconciled it by, I'm doing good. You know, my father-in-law, you know, I can sustain what he's doing, taking something he's learned and take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And, you know, urethanes and epoxies, we weren't doing that.
Yeah.
Specialized coatings. And so that's one of them. And for me, it doesn't matter what we're doing. And I feel that the insight comes from being in a business, and that's where other ideas come from.
Yeah.
I go to different things. I'm like, well, what if we bought that company? It's
Yeah.
unrelated to painting, but that's where I start to say that's where the insight comes.
Yeah.
Is what other things can you grow within your blueprint? And that was very hard to me to learn, is how to read blueprints,
Yeah.
to do the takeoffs. Immediately we load them. My business partner was doing it all night and doing paper. Now we have a computer that we go through and you have to manually do that. So I start to think, I got to look at the future because I am a laggard. So my thing is, how do I get ahead of the future before it gets me?
Yeah.
So because we are in skilled labor.
Well, I think it's good that you bring in all that institutional knowledge to skilled labor because that's really what it needs, is folks like yourself. So you mentioned one of the nuns from Bishop Dunn. You mentioned the light at the end of the tunnel guy. Were there any other key mentors that you had that kind of helped get you to where you are today?
That's been all the difference in my life, is being developed.
Yeah.
My first mentor, I worked at the Dallas Museum of Art
Yeah.
for 5 years. I was a gallery attendant during undergrad, and I would say, you know, the restrooms are that way. We close at 5. Please don't touch the art.
Yeah.
And so I kept getting promoted, and I at that time it was a mentor of mine who was the vice president of operations.
Yeah.
That took me in HR. He was important. He started explaining the things you needed to do, you know, when you go to restaurants, and
Yeah.
really just brought in some of the exposure from the East Coast. I had no idea. And then in grad school, my mentor, Robert Nichols, I met him. He's the one that was a Bobcat distributor, but he had like alternate timelines. But that was important. The first thing he did is said, here's a set of golf clubs. You need to be ready for a tournament 1 year from now. And it sounds cliche, but I've been able to get out to the golf course and have meetings, and it's a way of learning a lot about a person. And so that's been painful, but I've been developed. At Rosewood, you know, they took the time to develop me to different things. So my mentors have been important, and I pass that along.
Yeah.
You know, everywhere I've gone, I've taken persons that maybe don't have a certain, for example, in HR,
Yeah.
set up an HR office where they don't have those skill sets. So you teach them.
Right.
Somebody taught me, came off the gallery attendant security guard floor, and someone said, let me see your papers. Let me see your thought process. Let me develop you. And so that is all the difference. We have to mentor people.
Yeah, totally agree. That's how others get better. AI is not going to do it all for us.
Right.
No, that's awesome. And so you started playing golf, selling Bobcats?
Mm-hmm. So, you know, the ball never went straight, but that's where it was the first time my mentor would call, and he's like, Homero, what are you doing? I go, I'm on a golf course with Say No More. Call me back later. I mean, it was a rite of passage. And then when I went to Midland, I feel like Midland, I was fortunate to be a member of the Midland Country Club, made great friendships. And it was like, you have to know how to play golf. So that's been beneficial. So I was a Bobcat salesman doing that, and then got serious about it about 3 or 4 years ago during COVID. And then that's where you start to get invited. But it opens up a world. That's how you and I met.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
you know, if I didn't,
there.
if Robert Nichols hadn't said to do that, you and I don't meet,
Yeah.
and we start to cultivate a friendship. And it's been important for me to meet with you on the golf course and to be able to share vulnerabilities with you and say, well, Matt, how did you do with this?
Yeah.
We need to have access to peers, and that's where I've been able to have access.
Yeah, it's very rare you can lock away another person for 4 hours and really get to know them and
Yeah.
see how they handle difficult situations.
Yes.
Invariably, all of us have terrible shots, and I have more than most. Well, this has been great, Homero. We're getting close to running out of time. Are there any stories that you wanted to share that we didn't cover, or any kind of closing thoughts for our audience as it relates to grit and kind of what you've been through in your time here?
Closing story is there's a natural evolution with anybody in their workplaces. The places that I worked at were some of the greatest companies ever.
Yeah.
That's the greenest grass there'll ever be, but there's not enough pasture.
Yeah.
And so that next iteration, it has forced me to become something else,
Yeah.
right? To get stronger, to all of a sudden, maybe I was super fine grit and now I can do the coarse grit. So it's made me stronger. And the advice I say is, I'm a contrarian when it comes to ideas. I want to go to spaces that are not crowded, and people will look at you like you're crazy. And I may be crazy, right? But I have to look at opportunities where others are not.
Yeah.
And so the advice is, place the bet, and it's possible I could fail, right? But it's not going to be because I didn't try. And so my thing is making myself better. My teammate, my wife, she's all in. And she's the one that I lean on for resources in terms of advice and vulnerabilities and what do you think? I keep her. She's been the person that has allowed me. We did this together.
Yeah.
And essentially she's the one that, half that bet was hers.
Yeah, she's a great lady. So.
Yeah. So it's been, it's difficult. It is, but I enjoy it. And the hardest reconciliation was saying, oh, the painter. But at the same time, why not?
Yeah.
So it's been a great journey. And I will say this. I remember being in San Francisco when I had got essentially a new iteration of where I was going to go to Midland before I knew that. And Steve Sands calls. He goes, well, Merle, where are you? Today's your last day. And I said, it is my last day. But if I had known, I would have booked San Francisco longer. I said, so I'm in San Francisco. It's my daughter's sophomore year of college. What are you going to do? And he goes, what are you going to do, Homero? And I said, I don't know that. The best thing I could tell you is, do you remember when you're a senior in high school and you're applying to all these colleges?
Yeah.
You don't know where you're going to get in, but wherever you go, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
So that is how I feel. I don't know where I'm going, but I know wherever I go, it's going to be great. So each of these stops has made me who I am. And I don't know if I could be the person I am had I not gone through those things.
Yeah.
And so that's where I find myself is you evolve.
Yeah.
And you have to find new opportunities, and those experiences make you who you are. And so that was, and now the best thing I can say is right now I'm a toddler. My business is a toddler. And when you see a toddler at the coffee shop at Oak Cliff Roasters, you see they've got kids have food on their face and they're stumbling. They're going to hit their eye on the eye level. They're going to have little bruises. That's me. Your business, you're the cool 18-year-old. No, you're going to college, or maybe you're the 21-year-old. And so there's a natural evolution in the business. And right now life's in disarray.
Yeah.
And it's messy. But I have examples of other businesses that I'm like, okay, I want to be that. So much of my life was getting to this point in my life, to getting to 50, where the kids are gone and they're self-sustaining. You built them to sell, and then you look around, you're like, my whole life was getting here. Now I have new mentors that are in their 70s or 80s. I'm like, I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know you're going to be successful. You've got the grit and determination to do it. And I think what people don't realize, it's rarely a straight line that gets us to where we are to be an entrepreneur. I think there's a myth that, you read about these kids that are entrepreneurs at 25 and 30, but most really successful entrepreneurs start their business sometime between 40 and 60. So for those that are listening, there's obviously lots of time left.
Yes.
Well, Homero, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to have you as a friend and a golf buddy. Enjoyed having you. Thanks for sharing your story with our audience.
Thank you.
To those listening, hopefully there's some great takeaways from Homero's story that you can incorporate into your lives, your business, and what you're thinking about next. So until our next episode, stay gritty.